Others, such as Mont Cervin, are more difficult of access, but we perceived the summit of Mont Cervin 1,200 feet below us. And then, what a view to reward us for our troubles and dangers! The sky, still pure, had assumed a deep blue tint. The sun, despoiled of a part of his rays, had lost his brilliancy, as if in a partial eclipse. This effect, due to the rarefaction of the air, was all the more apparent as the surrounding eminences and plains were inundated with light. No detail of the scene, therefore, escaped our notice. In the southeast, the mountains of Piedmont, and farther off the plains of Lombardy, shut in our horizon. Towards the west, the mountains of Savoy and Dauphine, beyond the valley of the Rhone. In the northwest, the Lake of Geneva and the Jura. Then, descending towards the south, a chaos of mountains and glaciers beyond description, overlooked by the masses of Monte Rosa, the Mischabelhorner, the Cervin, the Weichhorn, the most beautiful of crests, as Tyndall calls it, and farther off by the Jungfrau, the Monk, the Eiger, and the Finsteraarhorn. The extent of our range of vision was not less than 60 leagues. We therefore saw at least 120 leagues of country. A special circumstance happened to enhance the beauty of the scene. Clouds formed on the Italian side and invaded the valleys of the Pennine Alps without veiling their summits. We soon had under our eyes a second sky, a lower sky, a sea of clouds, whence emerged a perfect archipelago of peaks and snow-wrapped mountains. There was something magical in it, which the greatest poets could scarcely describe. The summit of Mont Blanc forms a ridge from southwest to northeast, 200 paces long and a yard wide at the culminating point. It seemed like a ship's hull overturned, the keel in the air. Strangely enough, the temperature was very high, 10 degrees above zero. The air was almost still. Sometimes we felt a light breeze. The first care of our guides was to place us all in a line on the crest opposite Chamonix, that we might be easily counted from below, and thus make it known that no one of us had been lost. Many of the tourists had ascended the Brevent and the Jardin to watch our ascent. They might now be assured of its success. But to ascend was not all. We must think also of going down. The most difficult, if not most wearisome, task remained, and then one quits with regret a summit attained at the price of so much toil. The energy which urges you to ascend, the need, so natural and imperious, of overcoming, now fails you. You go forward listlessly, often looking behind you. It was necessary, however, to decide, and after a last traditional libation of champagne, we put ourselves in motion. We had remained on the summit an hour. The order of march was now changed. M.N.'s party led off, and, at the suggestion of his guide Packard, we were all tied together with a rope. M.N.'s fatigue, which his strength, but not his will, betrayed, made us fear falls on his part which would require the help of the whole party to arrest. The event justified our foreboding. On descending the side of the wall, M.N. made several false steps. His guides, very vigorous and skillful, were happily able to check him, but ours, feeling with reason that the whole party might be dragged down, wished to detach us from the rope. Levesque and I opposed this, and by taking great precautions, we safely reached the base of this giddy ledge. There was no room for illusions. The almost bottomless abyss was before us, and the pieces of detached ice, which bounded by us with the rapidity of an arrow, clearly showed us the route which the party would take if a slip were made. Once this terrible gap crossed, I began to breathe again. We descended the gradual slopes which led to the summit of the corridor. The snow, softened by the heat, yielded beneath our feet. We sank in it to the knees, which made our progress very fatiguing. We steadily followed the path by which we ascended in the morning, and I was astonished when Gaspard Simon, turning towards me, said, "Monsieur, we cannot take any other road, for the corridor is impracticable, and we must descend by the wall which we climbed up this morning." I told Levesque this disagreeable news. "Only," added Gaspard Simon, "I do not think we can all remain tied together. However, we will see how M.N. bears it at first." We advanced towards this terrible wall. M.N.'s party began to descend, and we heard Packard talking rapidly to him. The inclination became so steep that we perceived neither him nor his guides, though we were bound together by the same rope. As soon as Gaspard Simon, who went before me, could comprehend what was passing, he stopped, and after exchanging some words in patois with his comrades, declared that we must detach ourselves from M.N.'s party. "We are responsible for you," he added, "but we cannot be responsible for others, and if they slip, they will drag us after them." Saying this, he got loose from the rope. We were very unwilling to take this step, but our guides were inflexible. We then proposed to send two of them to help M.N., guides, they eagerly consented, but having no rope, they could not put this plan into execution. We then began this terrible descent. Only one of us moved at a time, and when each took a step, the others buttressed themselves ready to sustain the shock if he slipped. The foremost guide, Edward Ravenel, had the most perilous task. It was for him to make the steps over again, now more or less worn away by the ascending caravan. We progressed slowly, taking the most careful precautions. Our route led us in a right line to one of the crevasses which opened at the base of the escarpment. When we were going up, we could not look at this crevasse, but in descending, we were fascinated by its green and yawning sides. All the blocks of ice detached by our passage went the same way, and after 2 or 3 bounds, engulfed themselves in the crevasse. As in the jaws of the Minotaur, only the jaws of the Minotaur closed after each morsel, while the unsatiated crevasse yawned perpetually and seemed to await, before closing, a larger mouthful. It was for us to take care that we should not be this mouthful, and all our efforts were made for this end. In order to withdraw ourselves from this fascination, this moral giddiness, if I may so express myself, we tried to joke about the dangerous position in which we found ourselves, and which even a chamois would not have envied us. We even got so far as to hum one of Offenbach's couplets, but I must confess that our jokes were feeble, and that we did not sing the airs correctly. I even thought I discovered Levesque obstinately setting the words of Barbe Bleu to one of the airs in Il Trovatore, which rather indicated some grave preoccupation of the mind. In short, in order to keep up our spirits, we did as do those brave cowards who sing in the dark to forget their fright. We remained thus, suspended between life and death for an hour which seemed an eternity. At last we reached the bottom of this terrible escarpment. We there found MN and his party safe and sound. After resting a little while, we continued our journey. As we were approaching the Petit Plateau, Edward Ravenel suddenly stopped, and turning towards us said, "See what an avalanche, it has covered our tracks." An immense avalanche of ice had indeed fallen from the Gouter, and entirely buried the path we had followed in the morning across the Petit Plateau. I estimated that the mass of this avalanche could not comprise less than 500 cubic yards. If it had fallen while we were passing, one more catastrophe would no doubt have been added to the list, already too long, of the necrology of Mont Blanc. This fresh obstacle forced us to seek a new road, or to pass around the foot of the avalanche. As we were much fatigued, the latter course was assuredly the simplest, but it involved a serious danger. A wall of ice more than 60 feet high, already partly detached from the Gouter, to which it only clung by one of its angles, overhung the path which we should follow. This great mass seemed to hold itself in equilibrium. What if our passing, by disturbing the air, should hasten its fall? Our guides held a consultation. Each of them examined with a spyglass the fissure which had been formed between the mountain and this alarming ice mass. The sharp and clear edges of the cleft betrayed a recent breaking off, evidently caused by the fall of the avalanche. After a brief discussion, our guides, recognizing the impossibility of finding another road, decided to attempt this dangerous passage. "We must walk very fast, even run if possible," said they, "and we shall be in safety in 5 minutes. Come, messieurs, a last effort." A run of 5 minutes is a small matter for people who are only tired, but for us, who were absolutely exhausted, to run even for so short a time on soft snow, in which we sank up to the knees, seemed an impossibility. Nevertheless, we made an urgent appeal to our energies, and after 2 or 3 tumbles, drawn forward by one, pushed by another, we finally reached a snow hillock on which we fell breathless. We were out of danger. It required some time to recover ourselves. We stretched out on the snow with a feeling of comfort which everyone will understand. The greatest difficulties had been surmounted, and though there were still dangers to brave, we could confront them with comparatively little apprehension. We prolonged our halt in the hope of witnessing the fall of the avalanche, but in vain. As the day was advancing, and it was not prudent to tarry in these icy solitudes, we decided to continue on our way, and about 5 o'clock we reached the hut of the Grands Mulets. After a bad night, attended by fever caused by the sunstrokes encountered in our expedition, we made ready to return to Chamonix. But before setting out, we inscribed the names of our guides and the principal events of our journey, according to the custom, on the register kept for this purpose at the Grands Mulets. About 8 o'clock we started for Chamonix. The passage of the Bossons was difficult, but we accomplished it without accident. Grands Mulets, party descending from the hut. Half an hour before reaching Chamonix, we met, at the chalet of the Dard Falls, some English tourists who seemed to be watching our progress. When they perceived us, they hurried up eagerly to congratulate us on our success. One of them presented us to his wife, a charming person with a well-bred air. After we had given them a sketch of our perilous peregrinations, she said to us in earnest accents, "How much you are envied here by everybody. Let me touch your alpenstocks." These words seemed to interpret the general feeling. The ascent of Mont Blanc is a very painful one. It is asserted that the celebrated naturalist of Geneva, de Saussure, acquired there the seeds of the disease of which he died in a few months after his return from the summit. I cannot better close this narrative than by quoting the words of M. Markham Sherwell. However it may be, he says, in describing his ascent of Mont Blanc, I would not advise anyone to undertake this ascent, the rewards of which can never have an importance proportionate to the dangers encountered by the tourist and by those who accompany him. The end.